Hey, Sonic fans, I think we have a major propaganda problem on our hands. We haven't had propaganda this blatant or obscene in favor of Shadow the Hedgehog since 2005, where in the opening cutscene we see Sonic the Hedgehog beaten down, falling to the ground, and Shadow standing with a gun for whatever reason and flying away. Oh yeah, remember that cool motorcycle he was driving around in that same cinematic as well? Well, guess what? It's back. Sonic fans, we need to sound the alarms. I mean, listen, there's no doubt that Sonic the Hedgehog's reputation has been restored. Ever since that first movie came out in 2020, we've seen this hardcore refocus on the Sonic franchise by Sega due to the success of this movie that kicked all of it off. But now they're not just stopping at Sonic, they're trying to revive other characters as well. Ever since 2024 started, we've gotten this fearless year of Shadow, and I gotta say, Sega's focus has been making Shadow look like the absolute coolest character in the franchise, and I think a lot of new fans are gonna come into this franchise, especially after Sonic Movie 3, and a lot of people may be thinking that Shadow is the coolest character, or dare I even say Shadow is the main character. That's how urgent this is, everyone. I gotta say, in the early years of the franchise, it always seemed like these two characters were definitely on equal footing, kind of like this anything you can do, I can do better kind of thing. I never at once really thought Shadow was superior to Sonic, especially when you look at SA2. They're equally as cool, they're equally as formidable. You know, there's technically dialogue in SA2 where Shadow ponders if Sonic's actually the ultimate life form. Whether or not that's canon or true, or whether he was joking, that's another, question. But it still feels like these two were definitely equals. Or are they truly equals? Even in games like Sonic Battle is a similar situation where Sonic definitely stands toe-to-toe with Shadow, even actually defeats him. Same situation with Sonic Heroes, which is the first Sonic game I ever played. It wasn't Shadow that went super to defeat the Metal Overlord. It was Super Sonic who helped power up his friends in order to defeat Neo Metal Sonic or the Metal Overlord. Never really did I think Shadow was just like completely superior to Sonic, but recent years the propaganda has been strong. So the purpose of today's video is to ponder and question with the audience, which character is cooler these days? Is it Sonic the Hedgehog or is it Shadow? Well, first, in order to understand this question, we'll have to do a little bit of a dive into the fearless year of Shadow so far. So the first project we got was actually Season 3 of Sonic Prime, and I guess we can kind of encapsulate all of the seasons of Sonic Prime into this discussion because it's really one season technically. So in this show, Sonic and Shadow do have a couple of encounters, and there's even a one-on-one battle, and who clearly comes out on top? It's Shadow. Shadow takes Nine's tech, runs away, defeats Sonic, and Sonic is left in the dust. Furthermore, another thing to add into this discussion is how well written Sonic Prime Shadow was. He was probably one of the S tier characters. I actually did a Sonic Prime character tier list, and most people agree that Shadow is one of the best characters in the show. What a lot of people don't like about Sonic Prime, and there's a lot of discourse out there amongst the Sonic fan base about the way Sonic was characterized in this show. Because he's technically supposed to be the same Sonic from the games, you notice that there's a very stark contrast in some of the portrayals of Sonic, which is consistent with the franchise in general. We've seen it in a lot of different games. A lot of people have this kind of idea of what Sonic is supposed to be in the games, and they think that Prime was a bit more of a dumbed down character that's really not as sharp as the original Sonic. He's a little bit more childish. He loses to almost everyone that he fights. He makes a lot of mistakes. His writing and his dialogue can be a little bit cringe at times. Even in the climax of the show that you wait 3 seasons for, who ends up saving Sonic in the end? Who is the big hero at the very end of Sonic Prime? It's actually Shadow, which is crazy. So in Sonic Prime, most people like Shadow better than Sonic, so that's already 1 point for Shadow this year. Let's skip a little bit ahead to the end of 2024 where we will see Sonic Movie 3, and I think this will probably have the biggest trickle effect, and every piece of Shadow propaganda will get amplified 10 times harder after this movie comes out. Let me explain. Well, first of all, we got to talk about how great Shadow looks in this movie and how cool he looks in the trailer so far. By the looks of it, it looks like Shadow the Hedgehog in the Sonic movie universe is so powerful that he solos all of Team Sonic. So 3v1, he easily destroys Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. So right off the bat, we already know a lot of people who see Shadow for the first time in this movie are going to be like, wait, this guy is actually sick. Not only that, it seems like it's going to take Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and potentially Eggman to defeat Shadow. Or at least that's kind of what we're up against in the beginning of the movie. And even though Shadow's technically going to be the evil big bad in this movie, I think his tragic backstory is going to be something that makes him a more sympathetic villain, technically. While he'll probably progress into anti-hero towards the end, the same is true playthrough of the games, Shadow's tragic backstory will make him a sympathetic villain. In my opinion, the best villains in media are the ones that you can relate to, and I'm sure they're going to do a good job of kind of laying the framework for why Shadow's actually not a villain throughout the movie, but we're going to see some scenes like in this one right here where he's kind of reflecting against the broken glass, where his motivations come from. So I feel like we're going to be liking him throughout the entire movie, despite the fact that he's going to be the primary antagonist for like 90% of the movie. And personally, I really do like Movie Sonic, but I think a lot of the reasons why some critics don't like Movie Sonic, for all those reasons, they don't like this version of the character, I think those are going to be the reasons why they like Movie Shadow. I think he's going to be like the polar opposite of Movie Sonic and be a lot more closer to the game Shadow. While movies are very, very different mediums than video games, I do hope that at the end of Sonic Movie 3, we do get that same feeling that I had in Sonic Adventure 2, that Sonic and Shadow are definitely equal in power and not one being more powerful than the other. But we'll have to see what happens. So back to the point that I was making earlier about the propaganda about Shadow being amplified once Sonic Movie 3 comes out. So like, what happens after Sonic Movie 3 comes out and new fans are introduced into the franchise? Well, they're gonna go on YouTube and look up videos of Sonic. They're gonna go on Netflix and search up Sonic and then stumble upon Sonic Prime probably. Some of them may even go on the App Store and download the brand new Sonic Rumble game, especially if they're, you know, accustomed to mobile games and they play Fall Guys or Stumble Guys or whatever. And to tie it all back together, they're gonna have a mainline Sonic game to play called Sonic and Shadow Generations. Fortunately, Sonic Generations is one of the better 3D Sonic games ever made. So at the very least, they're gonna be playing a good game. But at the same time, from all the interviews and story trailers and everything that we've seen, it looks like we're gonna see a much cooler Shadow in Shadow Generations than Sonic in Sonic Generations, because everyone knows that the original Sonic Generations doesn't really have a very strong story, whereas the Shadow game is gonna be built off of how cool the story is in a lot of ways. Let's also not forget the Shadow Generations Dark Beginnings animation, which will be packaged with some copies of like the PS5 version, I think, but obviously will be readily available on YouTube for people who go down the Sonic rabbit hole after they watch the third movie. How awesome has this been so far? The action is great. The dialogue and writing for Shadow is cool. Like, it just makes Shadow look even cooler. None of this is really in Sonic Generations. Not that it needed to be. Sonic Generations is a great game. Criticizing the story of Sonic Generations is kind of dumb for this type of argument, and it's not really fair. But you're gonna see stuff like this in the Shadow campaign, and then you're gonna see this in Sonic Generations.
I'm sorry. I didn't get that memo. I beat you every time. No, seriously. We beat this guy every time. It's like it's our job or something.
What's Eggman even doing here? I thought you said he'd been kidnapped by that big weird thing that sent us all to this place.
So Sonic and Shadow Generations is going to be about celebrating the origins of both characters, but it seems like a lot more effort is going to be put into the story of the origins of Shadow. So it's like people are going to be playing this game for the first time and be like, yo, Shadow is cooler than Sonic. Like, I think for the first time in a very long time, and it's well deserved because Shadow is amazing. Like, Shadow is going to be seen as the cooler character than Sonic. Classic Sonic and modern Sonic are going to be going on this happy, carefree adventure, while Shadow's going to be fighting his inner demons. It's actually kind of hilarious if you think about it. It's pretty memeable. Fortunately, Sonic Frontiers does recapture a lot of that magic for Sonic. While I think the story could have some improvements, but like the animation in the game definitely doesn't sell some of the coolness as strong. A lot of the coolness does come from the spectacle of this game, whereas even in the Shadow game, the animations look really good. That's another conversation, but fortunately, Sonic Frontiers does try to recapture a lot of that spirit. So going forward, right now, I think newer fans are going to find Shadow to be cooler. So we're going to have to see how Sega responds with the next mainline Sonic game or whatever the next Sonic project is, because I think we have a Shadow problem. Now, if a bunch of new fans come into the franchise and in every recent project, Shadow is seen as the much cooler character than Sonic, a lot of people's first impressions of Shadow are going to be like, yo, he's better. So I don't know if he'll overtake Sonic, but I think it's going to be very close to how newer fans kind of perceive these characters. So it's going to be interesting to see the reputation of Shadow after this year. Don't look too deep into this video. Obviously, we're joking a little bit here and there, but I do think there's a serious discussion as to which character is now cooler, especially given all of the new projects. Is it Sonic or is it Shadow? Let me know down below what you think.